Oh dear, it was a horrible weekend for the Big 12.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. It wasn't all bad in the Big 12, just mostly, but I'll get to the not bad part, and Oklahoma takes care of Michigan. I saw it coming, but I have thoughts, and I'm not as high on the Sooners as many of you probably are right now. This episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. The Big 12 had a no good, very bad, ugly, bad feeling, bad result. This is going to cost you sort of weekend. Not all hope is lost, but a lot of it was taken away with what happened. So let's start with Arizona State. My number one take going into this game was the Big 12 can't afford a loss here. Now, on the other side of the coin, I have said all offseason on this very show, Mississippi State is going to beat somebody that you don't think they should. Turns out they beat somebody I didn't think they should. I thought they would cover, but I thought Arizona State would win. That was looking good right until a blown coverage there with less than a minute to go. And Arizona State suffers a really bad looking loss for the Big 12. I mean, really, really bad. So the Bulldogs could be better than people think. I'm not surprised at that. I am surprised that a team expected to contend for a Big 12 championship just went and lost to a team that won 2 games last year. Now, Alabama just lost to Florida State out of the perceived very weak ACC. They won 2 games last year. It turns out teams can improve in an offseason. This we have seen in college football across the country. But Arizona State losing this game is a bad look for the Big 12, and they are going to feel these consequences. The Big 12, since the playoff expanded to 12 teams, I've said is going to be a one-bid league. Now, what the ACC showed us last year, because those two conferences are, I think, correctly viewed on a similar level to one another, I don't think the gap between them in the Big Ten and the SEC is as big as some, particularly an SEC country, like to believe at times. But it's really hard to make that case in this particular moment when Mississippi State just knocked off the reigning Big 12 champs. So the Big 12, in a quest to get 2 teams into the playoff, has 2 options. Option number 1, have a team that is 11-1 or 12-0 lose the Big 12 championship game, or option number 2, find a team that can put together a 10-2 resume that gives you legitimate consideration for the college football playoff. Those are the only ways. 9-3 Big 12, you're not getting in. But the perception of the league just took a massive hit. This is a problem if you want to get 2 teams into the playoff. Now, maybe you don't care about the playoff whatsoever. I don't suspect that that's the case in Big 12 country. I think you'd like to have 2 teams make the playoff. Who are those teams going to be? Who? I'll talk about a couple of them later on today's show. Iowa State and Utah are probably the best hope you have. But I wish I could say the bad news for the Big 12 now that we're 1 week away from conference play really kicking off across the country. I wish I could say the bad news was limited to Arizona State, who is absolutely an outright loser in my view after that game, because now you question, wait, are we really taking that big, massive step back without Cam Scadaboo that some people predicted? Looked that way after Saturday. But there's a long season, and you haven't lost a Big 12 game yet. That's the good news. There are few programs and few fan bases that should feel as good about their team right now as the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I have liked Jeff Lebby coming into the year. I don't think they are done beating teams that people say, oh, no, they're not going to win, or they'll be an underdog of 6 to 10 points. No, I don't think they're done at all. They're winning a couple of conference games. I firmly believe that. But the bad news for the Big 12, who we're focusing on, didn't stop there. It was almost worse. It was almost much worse, if not for the two teams we'll talk about later in today's show. But it wasn't just that Mississippi State beat Arizona State. It wasn't just that Kansas had a 21-6 lead at the end of the first quarter and wound up not even covering 6.5 points as a dog to put me at under 500 for my best bets of the week. I mean, holy smokes, that was a bad beat. They were running out the clock. For goodness sake, Kansas. No, it was also the fact that Ohio picked up a win over West Virginia. Yeah, it's a bottom feeder in the league. That wasn't the only Group of 5 loss that the conference suffered over the weekend. Army knocked off Kansas State. What in the world is happening to Kansas State? Chris Kleiman, you owe a lot of us some explanations, including your fans in Manhattan who are wondering, wait a second, weren't we an 8-floor win team this year? Aren't we a Big 12 title contender? How in the world you lose to Iowa State? That's forgivable. You had a scare against North Dakota, and now you lose to Army, and you're out about $1.2 million for your troubles? Yikes. And I mean yikes. So 2 Group of 5 losses, combined with a bevy of other non-conference results in previous weeks that don't exactly look great on the resume, like Colorado losing to Georgia Tech despite the Yellow Jackets in Boulder turning the ball over 3 times in the first quarter. Yeah, Colorado never led by more than 7 points in that game. But this weekend, make no mistake about it, you're going to forget about it once conference play rolls around. It's an easy thing to do. 1 week comes and goes. Oh, it's week 2. Teams are going to improve. Yeah, they absolutely could. The problem is that because the SEC has won several of these non-conference matchups, they have a lot of teams in the top 25 at the moment. The Big 12, not so much. Some of the best teams in that league are viewed now very differently. Kansas State and Arizona State. Hopefully, Utah starts getting the respect that they rightfully deserve. But the depth of this league also makes it likely that you won't have 2 11-plus win teams meeting in the conference championship game. That's your only hope. Because I don't see the option. I don't see the avenue now for you to get a 10-2 that competes because you just took a big perception hit in the eyes of the college football world. And guess what? You deserved it. You deserved it. I dunked on Billy Napier on a show that I posted late yesterday. You can go check that out right on this very channel, however you're listening to or watching this show. And you know what? He deserves to have plenty of shots taken at him. And the almighty SEC has once again lost a Group of 5 game. They have several over the last couple of years. But if you're in Big 12 country, wanting to say, oh, the SEC's overrated and whatnot, you don't have a leg to stand on this week. You just don't. You better get a bunch of different results in week 3 that make your league look better if you want to have those sorts of conversations. But right now, the Big 12, yeah, you're giving a lot of fodder to the Big 12 doesn't deserve anything sort of crowd over in SEC country. How are you going to argue with them right now? It was not a good week for the Big 12. It wasn't all terrible, though. First, this episode brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, which sometimes you do, they have next day delivery. You want to talk about a game changer in business? That is what it's all about. A game-changing move is next day delivery, and Supply House has got just that. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. Use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And you can get real tickets and real good deals over with our friends at Game Time. College football is back. You're excited. I'm excited. We're all excited. But we're not excited about the hassle that can be buying college football tickets. So you want to make that process easier? Of course you do. That is why you should check out Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And let me tell you, That's my favorite feature. They have a bunch of great features. They've got zone deals too. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. They have all sorts of stuff to make the ticket buying process better for you. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Iowa State could be the best team in the Big 12. If you want to find an optimistic look at a league getting, like the Big 12, getting two teams into the college football playoff, I know the two teams that are most likely to do it. The problem is other teams that were also going to be in that sort of running to maybe get in at 10-2, to get two or dare I say three teams into the college football playoff in a perfect world. Those teams have now fallen off. And I'll get to Baylor in a moment because, oh, what a game. That was not a good feeling there for SMU. Great feeling for Baylor. What a comeback. Sawyer Robertson is that guy. The rest of Baylor, I don't know. But Sawyer Robertson is that guy. But let's start with Iowa State. Iowa State looks like the most complete team in the Big 12 outside of Utah. And by the way, I include Texas Tech in that conversation because I don't know if Baron Morton's going to be able to stay healthy for the entire year. I hope he will. Some people preseason power rated Texas Tech as the number one team in the Big 12. It was me. I did that. I wasn't the only one. But Texas Tech can still be really good. They look good over the weekend. They handled business against their Group of 5 opponent. Wasn't as hard as some of the other ones perhaps, but guess what? Kansas State's got a transitive loss to an FCS team. So, frankly, you take any sort of win where you can get them, I suppose, right now if you're the Big 12. But Iowa State looks like a team to me that is out to go win the Big 12 championship, and I felt that coming into the year. I thought they were one of the best teams in the league. They go out and pick up a win in the non-conference slate that, boy, the Big 12 really needed. Just to be able to say, hey, we're not getting blanked. We're not getting completely worked in the non-conference slate here. It hasn't been good, but at least we've got these games to hold on to. So Iowa State wins the Cyhawk for a second straight year on a late field goal. 16-13 the final score. Nobody is surprised at that. Here's the good news for Iowa State. Their schedule gets pretty manageable once you get into conference play. Of course, they've already beaten Kansas State, and let's see what kind of season they're on track for. And don't forget, last year, Florida State lost the Ireland game, and their season was never the same. And Kansas State has now lost to a Group of 5 and nearly lost to an FCS team since losing the Ireland game. Hasn't been great. Not great, Bob. Anyway, so Arkansas State is up next, and yeah, that's not going to be a problem for Iowa State. At least, I don't think so. They're going on the road for reasons that no one quite understands. I wouldn't sleep on Arizona right now. Arizona's a team that a lot of people might have underrated coming into this year. Brent Brennan, plenty of pressure down there in Tucson to win. Go look at the start of the season. They don't have a marquee victory there, but I'm just telling you, they don't look like the same team that was on the field a season ago. But when you play Arizona, at Cincinnati, at Colorado, host BYU, host Arizona State, before you go at TCU, host Kansas, at Oklahoma State, the Big 12 as a conference, like Brett Yormark as conference commissioner, should be rooting for the Cyclones. Because they may very well be the best chance the league has of getting a second team into the playoff or getting a 10-2 team into the college football playoff. A win over Iowa in the Big 10 does something for you. Now, we'll see what kind of season Iowa winds up having because Mark Gronowski has thrown for, I think it's 127 yards in 2 games there with the Hawks offense. Like, the Hawkeyes, man, the forward pass, it's oil and water. It does not quite mix. But this was a really, really important outcome for the Big 12, or else you would have just had a cascading narrative that would have been impossible to push back on, that the Big 12 isn't winning any of their non-conference games because they haven't been winning them at the sort of clip that I feel they should, or that the league certainly would like them to. And then you throw in a couple of upsets and you're looking around going, boy, the bottom of our league is losing to the MAC. We had a team that was supposed to be near the top of our league almost lose to an FCS. We're losing the bottom of the SEC. At least Iowa State is out there picking up a win over the Big Ten. So good for Iowa State. When you win a rivalry game like that, I'll give you an outright win sort of vibe for the fan mood indicator, as I do every week when I talk about games the following week here on the show. 5-point scale. Outright win's the best you can feel. Outright lose the worst you can feel. That's an outright win for Iowa State. Any rivalry game like that, you go out there and win. I don't really care what the circumstance is. If you give me a backyard brawl and both teams are going into the game at 3-8, guess what? If West Virginia wins, yeah, that's an outright win because you're feeling great because, hey, we may have stunk this year, but at least we beat those guys over there. Keep an eye on the backyard brawl coming up here in the next couple weeks. Just don't forget about that football game. So really good outcome there for Iowa State. And they had a 13-3 lead. They lost it, but then they were able to get down the field. And Rocco Becht is just a winning football player. That's, I think, one of the better things you can say about him, in addition to the fact that he's also a really good and balanced football player. Then there was Baylor. So here's the thing about Baylor. Coming into the year, I said for the Big 12 to get 2 teams into the playoff, Baylor was actually one of their best opportunities to do so because Baylor has not 9, not 10, but 11 Power 4 opponents on the schedule. They're one of few teams in all of college football that has it. Alabama's one of the other ones, I believe. Alabama might have 10. I think I have that wrong. Bama has 10. But still, they played 2 Power 4 non-conference opponents. They opened at home against Auburn, and then they went on the road to SMU. And SMU has to be thinking, oh my gosh, what do we have to do to beat the Baylor Bears? I mean, for goodness sake, we had a 14-point lead late in the fourth quarter, and then Baylor came back and tied it. Now, this is a lean win vibe for me for the Baylor Bears. This is an outright loss vibe for SMU because they blew a major opportunity for a non-conference win to get that streak off of their back of losing to Baylor all the time, and their at-large playoff hopes are pretty slim now. So that was also on their home field. Not a good look for Rhett Lashley and company. They should have won the game. Baylor just found a way to win in overtime, double overtime, I believe. So 48-45 is the final score. I asked going into this game, is Baylor going to be able to stop the run? Because against Auburn, that was their problem. They couldn't stop the run. You looked around, and Auburn went for over 300 yards on the ground, and they didn't have to throw the ball with Jackson Arnold at all. Why? Because they could just hand it off each time and then attach an RPO, and boom, the game was over. Now, you remember TJ Harden? I talked about him a long time ago in the spring. He was floating around in the portal for a while. He landed at SMU, had a really nice game here for the Mustangs. It was in a loss. But SMU, that is not necessarily a run-first sort of team. They're sneaky good running, but they're not exceptional. They went for 186 yards in this game and 3 touchdowns. Harden himself had 115 of those yards on the ground. Baylor's defense is a problem. The offense is not. Sawyer Robertson has thrown for over 400 yards against Auburn and SMU. That is an SEC opponent and a playoff team from a year ago. Those are the 2 schools that Sawyer Robertson has torn up throwing the ball. He is phenomenal. He's playing great ball. He played hero ball to win Baylor this game. But I don't give Baylor an outright win here because I still have questions. Who are they going to stop? Are they ever going to stop someone? You can't win every game in a shootout. They've given up 38 and 45 points so far. They have Samford this week before they play the meat of their schedule. Arizona State at Oklahoma State, who did not look good over the weekend. Speaking of the Big 12 not having great outcomes, Oklahoma State, yikes. I know Oregon's good. 69-3. That's a yikes. Kansas State at TCU. Where are the how many points is TCU going to go for in that game? Boy, I'd watch out for the Horned Frogs. I would watch out for the Horned Frogs if I were Baylor in that game. Not that they're likely to overlook them. I'm just saying they could go for a lot of points because I like Josh Hoover a lot. I like that TCU offense. And, you know, if the Horned Frogs could stack together a 10-plus win season, I'm just realizing I might have overlooked them a little bit. I apologize for that, TCU. I shouldn't have overlooked you there. I really shouldn't have. But Baylor and Iowa State salvaged something for the Big 12 in what was otherwise a really, really bad weekend. I know they've got the TCU win, the league does, over North Carolina, but I don't actually think North Carolina is any good. They beat Charlotte this weekend. Hooray, first win for Bill Belichick. Okay, yeah, that's basically a participation trophy. So, yeah, good outcomes here for Baylor and Iowa State. And look, if Baylor were to just not lose a game the rest of the regular season, awesome. Anybody think that's happening in the Big 12? Anybody think that's happening with Baylor's defense? Yeah, I do not. So I want to expand my criteria that you are asking a lot for the Big 12 to get two teams into the playoff. You are going to need two of Utah, Iowa State, or TCU to win 11 or more regular season games. It's asking a lot. Utah's got to go to BYU. Rivalry games can get crazy. I'm just throwing it out there. Anyway, here's another game that it's my best prediction of the year so far. I'll tell you why. And why I still have questions about Oklahoma. First, this episode brought to you by the Game Cap. Quick question for all you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yes, I said hat. For me, it would definitely be the game because I'd want to look good, feel good, sound good. That's the rule. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles that fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use the code LOCKEDON, you will get your vintage hat for $16.99. That is $16.99. How much better can it get? Head to thegamecaps.com. That's thegamecaps, all one word, .com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use the code LOCKEDON for an exclusive discount because legends wear the game. I come on here and tell you when I'm wrong. I also get to come on here and tell you when I'm very right. This is the most right that one can possibly be. I picked Oklahoma to win. I picked them to cover. They were one of my best bets of the week. And I picked them to beat Michigan 24-13. I did a triple check before I came on and did this segment. And Oklahoma beat Michigan 24-13. And in my show on Friday, I talked about how Bryce Underwood might have a tough time against an Oklahoma defense on the road. First time he's started a game away from Ann Arbor. Yeah, this could be tough. Oh, look at that. Bryce Underwood, 9 of 24 passing the ball. I'm not here to tell you that Michigan stinks. I said Michigan was overrated a while ago. I think I'm right. I don't think they're a horrible team. They weren't a horrible team last year. They just had a horrible passing game. And I think they are right to invest in Bryce Underwood and allow him to grow and develop within the system. And if they can go and get some portal wide receivers in the offseason, unless they feel like they have young guys that are not ready now but will be ready next year, believe that when I see it, they can go find some high-end portal wide receivers, kind of like Penn State did this past year when they went and got Trevor Pena from Syracuse. They went and got Kyron Hudson from USC. If they can find guys like that, then guess what? I might pick Michigan to win the Big Ten in 2026 with Bryce Underwood back there. I might. I said might. I didn't say I'm going to. I said I might. So I was very right on this particular game. And I think Michigan's still in a good position as a program. I think Sharon Moore's still a good in-game coach. This was just a really, really difficult spot to be in. Now, I could very easily, and my guys, John Williams and Jay Smith of Locked On Sooners, would probably like me to come on here and say how much I think Oklahoma is an SEC title contender, and they were underrated, and they could make the college football playoff. And I have not changed my opinion one bit on the Oklahoma Sooners. This game played out exactly as I expected. This is a good lean win outcome to me. But this is not let's throw a party in Norman because we're going to the playoff on the back of John Mateer. John Mateer was not just, as you might expect, the leading passer for Oklahoma in this game. He threw for way more yardage than Bryce Underwood was able to, 270 to 142 to be exact. John Mateer was the leading rusher for Oklahoma in this game. That model is not sustainable. Now, is Oklahoma, the question you got to ask, because Michigan's got a good defense, even though they lost guys to the NFL, their personnel still good, not as good. One of the reasons I'm lower on Michigan than most this year. are you going to play a lot of defenses that are of Michigan's caliber that can take away your running backs? Because the running backs were a non-factor in the game. Michigan took them out of the picture. The Wolverines only ran for 8 more yards than the Sooners did. That's because John Mateer's legs were a factor. Now, that's one of the reasons that he was the top quarterback to move schools in the transfer portal this offseason coming over from Washington State. So it's not as if this is going away. Here is what I wonder. Number one, can you sustain an offense that produces enough when your quarterback is expected to be your leading rusher? Now, you can be a good team and have that approach. Georgia Tech is a notable example here. Georgia Tech runs Haynes King a lot. And Georgia Tech's a good team, my ACC dark horse. They also play in the ACC, which has some good elite trenches up front that can bang you up like Miami and Clemson. But overall, what I have noticed significantly, as much as any other year I can remember, the difference between the ACC and the programs that they are losing to, mostly in the SEC, is up front. Is the SEC looks a lot better. A lot better. And that's not going to surprise a lot of people. But the gap this year has been rather profound. So when I talk about Georgia Tech as an ACC title contender, I look at them and say, yeah, in that conference, I think they can. But Oklahoma ran John Mateer 19 times in this football game for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. And situationally, that's not going to go away. John Mateer's not going, just because they're going up against an SEC opponent, he's not going to have to say to his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, who he knows from his time at Washington State, no, coach, I can't run in the red zone here. That's always going to be there. Are you going to run John Mateer 19 times every single game for the rest of the year? Are you going to run him 15 times or more every single game for the rest of the year? I certainly hope not. That is a recipe to get your quarterback dinged up. And if he gets hurt, we know that Oklahoma is not going to be okay. All is not okay in Oklahoma if John Mateer gets hurt. Turns out that's like most places where you lose your starting quarterback and things get progressively worse. Now, the next logical question is, where does Oklahoma face a similar sort of challenge where you have a front four that can negate your running game because that Oklahoma offensive line has been rebuilt? It's improved. It did not look elite. Maybe it gets better, but it did not look elite. And how often can you rely on John Mateer to go for 300 to 350 yards passing to get you to the college football playoff or the SEC championship game? So that's what I wonder. Where does the running game come from for Oklahoma outside of the quarterback? By the way, for me personally, I think the mood in Ann Arbor should be no vibe change from last week. This is exactly what I expected. You lost a game on the road that you should lose. Your young quarterback did some good things. Yeah, that's fine. Season's not over. Even if you're someone that thinks Michigan should be a playoff team this year, okay. That hope is still within reach because we have the 12-team playoff now. But here are the list of teams that I would be concerned to watch Oklahoma go up against and try to run John Mateer 15 to 20 times over and over and over again. They play Auburn in the Jackson Arnold return trip in 2 weeks. That's going to be fun. They play Texas in Red River. Nasty front four. Front seven, frankly, is one of the best in all of college football. South Carolina has got dudes up front. Ask Virginia Tech how good they can be. Not as worried about Ole Miss. Tennessee, good. I'll say Tennessee, good. Alabama, I don't know what to be afraid of with Alabama right now, if anything at all. Missouri, okay. And then LSU the last week of the regular season at home. Did you watch their defense against Clemson? I did. They looked fast. They looked physical. They looked really, really good. So while I love this outcome for Oklahoma, not just because it is literally exactly what I predicted, but because the Sooners have been rewarded in this moment for making the sorts of moves that were necessary in the offseason after what happened last year. And with Venables coaching this season for his job, he went out there and won a game that he had to win. Wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't. But he got it done. And so now the question becomes, okay, you have the floor that I saw in Oklahoma coming into this year. Where can you get your ceiling to? And to me, that's going to come down to whichever one of these running backs emerge. You can't have in a big game this stat line from your backs. John Mateer carried it 19 times for 74 yards. If you take that out of the Oklahoma rushing attack from this past game against Michigan, there were 21 carries for, doing some quick math in my head, so forgive me here. Wait for it, 64 yards. 21 carries, 64 yards for everybody not named John Mateer. If Oklahoma corrects that, then we can talk about the SEC championship and the college football playoff. Until then, they are good, but they are not great. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.